All right, so I'm going to move on to this because this was Tucker 2 nights ago. The Koch brothers are supposedly, everybody's like, oh, funded by the Koch brothers, funded by the Koch brothers. They're supposedly, these Republicans who are funding everything. They're ex-Democrats who are just taking over the Republican Party, and they're the ones who are getting you and me off of YouTube. Off of Facebook.
Two of the richest men in the world. Each one of them is worth tens of billions of dollars. Some of their money is inherited, much of it they made themselves. But to their credit, the Kochs have never been content merely to get richer. They are engaged intellectuals. They have a sincere desire to change the world.
There it is.
So for years, the brothers have been the single most important funders of Republican politics in Washington, in the country. The Koch network of donors spends hundreds of millions of dollars every election cycle. Virtually every major conservative nonprofit in Washington takes Koch money, often a lot of it. Koch organizations train political organizers and candidates. Many Republican lawmakers owe their careers to the Kochs and are happy to say so. For people whose main business is making fertilizer and paper towels, the Kochs have been remarkably effective in American politics. And not surprisingly, the left hates them for it. Both the Koch brothers and their families, who by the way are very nice people, have been grotesquely and repeatedly maligned by the media. This in turn has convinced many conservatives that the Kochs must be on their side. Anyone who's been slandered by the New York Times has got to be doing something right. That's the idea. It's not a bad standard, but in this case, in the case of the Kochs, conservatives might want to pause and rethink the relationship. As it turns out, the Kochs don't have much in common with conservatives. They are in fact totally opposed to most conservative policy goals. The Kochs are libertarian ideologues. They're passionate and inflexible about what they believe. America first? The Kochs find the very notion of that absurd, if not fascist. An economic policy that seeks to strengthen families? The Kochs denounce that as, quote, crony capitalism or picking winners and losers. They think it's immoral, and they'll tell you so. Controlling our borders? The Kochs consider that racist. A few years ago, in fact, Bernie Sanders noted that the Koch brothers are far to the left of him on immigration. Open borders, quote, that's a Koch brothers proposal, Bernie Sanders said. And he was right. But in fact, it's more than a proposal. It's in effect what we have now in this country, open borders. And that's thanks in part to the Kochs. The overwhelming majority of Republicans want a secure border and less immigration. That's why they voted for Donald Trump. 2.5 years later, though, the border is more porous than ever. A tide of humanity is flooding in illegally. Republicans in Congress have done almost nothing to help with the situation. Why? Well, you can thank the Kochs for that. In 2018, Koch-backed organizations, the Freedom Network and Americans for Prosperity, pressured Republicans in Congress to use their limited post-election lame duck session to pass an amnesty for the so-called Dreamers. Going into this election, the 2020 race, amnesty remains the Kochs' top legislative priority. So if you're wondering why the Republican Party often seems completely out of sync with its own voters, this is why. And it's not just on immigration. The Koch network has also successfully pushed Republicans to join the left in going soft on crime. The Kochs aggressively back the First Step Act, which is currently allowing drug traffickers to leave prison early. They support the Sentencing Reform and Corrections Act. That would cut required penalties for heroin and cocaine traffickers in half. Now keep in mind, they're doing all of this in the middle of the deadliest drug epidemic in American history. The Kochs don't even bother to argue that these so-called reforms would help any law-abiding American in any way. They just believe it's the right thing, the libertarian thing to do. So they're pushing for it. On economics, meanwhile, you won't be surprised to learn that the Kochs hold views that bear no resemblance at all to what most Republican voters believe. The Kochs have pushed for cuts to Social Security and Medicare, for example. A vast majority of Americans are opposed to that. Most Republicans are opposed to that. Like almost everyone else, by the way, Republicans want lower drug prices. Drugs are expensive and getting more so. And yet the Kochs are working to kill a bill introduced by Senators Josh Hawley and Rick Scott that will prevent drug companies from charging Americans more than they charge the people of Canada or France. That seems like a fair idea to most people.
Wow.
The Kochs are preventing it from happening. Then the Kochs helped draft the 2017 tax cut. That turned out to be a far better deal for corporate America than it was for the American middle class. A majority of Republicans support capping interest rates on credit cards and payday loans. The Kochs think that idea is ridiculous. In fact, some years ago when David Koch ran for vice president as a libertarian, abolishing all usury laws was part of his platform. Now, there's nothing surprising about any of this or illegitimate. It's what many rich liberals believe. It's just not what most Republicans believe. And that's a problem, given that the Kochs are the single most powerful figures in the Republican Party. The Kochs don't seem interested in hearing you complain about that, or anything else, actually. Remarkably, they have now joined the left-wing campaign against free speech in America. Next month, the Charles Koch Institute will hold a summit with the Anti-Defamation League and executives from major tech companies, including Pinterest, Airbnb, Patreon, Mozilla. The stated purpose of the meeting is to formulate, quote, best practices on the fight against hate and extremism online, end quote. But you know exactly what that really means. It means censorship of your views. For the left, fighting extremism always entails crushing normal conservatives. That's why Pinterest has censored live action. It's why Patreon banned Milo Yiannopoulos. It's why Mozilla drove out Brendan Eich for the crime of donating to the wrong political campaign. Big tech has become a far greater threat to your freedom than the federal government. The Kochs don't care about that. Nothing Google does violates libertarian orthodoxy. More to the point, the Kochs don't care about Republican voters or what happens to them. Okay, that's fine. No law requiring them to care. But then why are they running the Republican Party? That's a question Republicans should start asking themselves.
So what I love about when we watch a segment like this from Tucker is like what you kind of started out the show with mentioning how Donald Trump now listens to Tucker, I think even more than Sean Hannity. And so when Tucker does a segment like this, he literally has the ear of the president. Now, I'm sure that the president knows the Koch brothers better than any of us because he's probably been in the mix with them. These millionaires and billionaires and men of power rub shoulders with each other. They're, you know, it's like an actor and actress usually only marries another actor and actress. Okay. And so the fact that Trump is hearing, oh, this has gotten down to the everyday people. I've already known that these guys were corrupt. I've already known what they do. I can now address it.
So I want to go over a little bit. Jim Hoft has been probably one of the only people on the from Gateway Pundit to break down the numbers on the censorship. Because Gateway Pundit was like number 3 in conservative sites being shared and tweeted out.
Right.
That's how I found out about them in 2016.
Exactly.
And they went down like 98%. I mean, imagine your reach. And Google did that. And Facebook did that. And YouTube did that. So on Wednesday night, Tucker Carlson warned President Trump. Now remember, Tucker Carlson has the ear of the president, and he knows.
I love this.
And
so
he hears what's happening. He knows what's happening. Okay, so if Donald Trump doesn't get elected, it will be purely because of tech censorship and no other reason. Right. So tech giants Google, Twitter, Facebook are currently purging conservative content from their platforms. In February 2018, Facebook launched a new algorithm to ensure that conservative news would not spread. And I remember, I tell you guys this all the time, but I want to kind of just like give you an idea of what was going on in 2016, because you have to remember it. You have to know how Donald Trump got elected. You have to know how basically Hillary did not get elected. Because I remember a lot of people were sharing anti-Hillary stuff right and left.
Exactly.
And it didn't matter who you were. It didn't matter if you were on the right or left. It was a free-for-all. It was very exciting. And I would be so excited because I would get on Twitter I would get on Facebook. I get on Twitter now because it's still in my feed. The stuff that I want, the Breitbart, my feed on Twitter is still the same. But my Facebook feed is not.
Right.
I was almost getting a little concerned there for a little bit because like my whole feed was just news sites, and I didn't see any of my friends' stuff. And I was like, wow, I mean, I need to go to like my cousins or whatever to see what's going on with them. But I liked the page. I said I wanted to follow most of their posts, and so they showed up. And now I can't tell you the last time I saw one. The only way you can get your page into people's feed is to boost it. And sometimes they don't allow you to boost it. This is how they're making money.
A lot of times they don't allow you
so
to
I
boost
see
it.
Ben Shapiro and Louder with Crowder and other people who pay to boost things. LifeSite News pays to boost things a lot. Lila Rose pays to boost things a lot. It's part of their budget. We have no budget, so we never boost our posts. If you see it, it's a fluke. So the algorithm change caused Donald Trump's engagement on Facebook posts to plummet 45%. His own posts, the president's posts, went down by half. Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders did not suffer any decline with Facebook engagement. Top conservative Facebook pages with daily traffic in the millions saw 75 in the millions. Facebook daily traffic in the millions. Breitbart did, and Gateway Pundit and Daily Caller. Millions of people were at their sites. Young Conservatives, Western Journalism, Sarah Palin, Chicks on the Right, Independent Journal Review, Right Wing News, The Gateway Pundit, InfoWars banned completely. They used to be shared tons on Facebook.
Oh, I know.
Pamela Geller, Laura Loomer, 100% Fed Up, The Drudge, and several others have seen dramatic loss in traffic and influence. Facebook uses Soros-funded Point Year as a fact check on their platform. So the same group that recently listed every prominent conservative publisher last week as fake news. Facebook has been shutting down traffic to conservative websites since the 2016 election. In March 2017, Columbia Journalism Review published a study of the 2016 election and found conservatives had abandoned the liberal mainstream media in 2016 and went online into social media to get their news. What? Oh, just get off Facebook. No, you don't understand. Where are you supposed to get your news? That's how things shifted. Okay? It shifted in 2016 because people didn't turn on their television and listen to CNN,
right.
ABC. That's what I grew up. My grandma used to just watch 60 Minutes and Nightline and all that stuff and just Channel 12
right.
ABC News. Okay? I don't know if she watched a lick of Fox, but she was a Republican. Now, people abandoned all that. And they were like, I need more news. So you trust your friends on Facebook. Right. You trust. And so when they read an article, you trust it, right? So this is the Facebook influence map, October 2016. So you have all these different sites, Breitbart over here, Truthfeed, Gateway Pundit, Fox News, and you see all these little dots and how they got bigger and bigger. And then you had the left wing over here. After this study was published, and Facebook went to work and started censoring conservative views, and then you see these. Facebook was on a mission to delete traffic to conservative websites. So boom, boom, boom. No more of these. No more.
Every day, the left denounced the president as a threat to democracy and free expression. You hear it constantly, but at the same time, the left is coming closer and closer to taking total control of the internet and blocking any speech it disagrees with. That is absolutely the plan. Tonight, we can exclusively report that last week, the Democratic Party chairman, Tom Perez, met with a Council on Technology and Society. This council included the CEO of the tech company TaskRabbit, among others. According to a summary of the meeting that we received, the group bluntly asked Tom Perez, again, the head of the Democratic Party, what they could do to, quote, contribute to the broad social good. When you ask that question to the head of the Democratic Party, what are you asking? How can we elect Democrats? Which is what they're trying to do. Meanwhile, in a not unrelated story, a coalition of major companies, including Verizon, NBC, Facebook, and Google, the biggest companies, has announced a new Global Alliance for Responsible Media. Remember that, Global Alliance for Responsible Media. Now, the stated goal is to pressure tech platforms to, quote, develop and deliver against a concrete set of actions, protocols, and processes for protecting people and brands, blah, blah, blah. In other words, what they're really saying is censorship, and censorship on a vast scale. If they have their way, this will be the end of free speech online and the death, by the way, of mainstream conservatism. Any voice right of center will be tarred as hate speech, Russian trolls, or simply bad for business. That's their game plan. It's simply a question of whether anybody in power in Washington will do anything to prevent it from happening before it does. And by the way, you'd think the Trump campaign might be interested in this, because there's no chance the president will be reelected if supporters can't speak freely online.
Thank you, Tucker.
Obviously. Blake Harris is author of The History of the Future, and he joins us tonight. Blake, thanks a lot for coming on. So this seems like an alignment of the people who control all speech online, and why shouldn't that terrify anyone who believes in free speech?
I wish I had an answer for you, but the answer is that it should. As you know from the last time I was on, I wrote this book, The History of the Future, and I set out to tell a story about this rags to riches VR story about this company, Oculus, founded by Palmer Luckey, sold to Facebook for $3 billion. And then my book took a left turn when Palmer ended up getting fired from the company for essentially being a Trump supporter. And I was like, you know, admitted to last time I was on the show, I'm a lifelong liberal, but this is not about left and right. This is about right and wrong, and it is alarming what is going on.
Well, it's horrifying, and because it is a concentration of more power in one place than we've seen in my lifetime, probably we've seen since the turn of the last century when Teddy Roosevelt helped break up the trusts, and yet nobody seems worried about it. Why is that?
I think, at first I asked myself that same question every morning, and I think that what I came to believe is that most of these people, most of these left-leaning people and the heads of the tech company and the populate tech companies are just so certain in their correctness. And so they think that they are fighting the good fight and helping Facebook in their mission. And Facebook is really largely like an activist company more than anything else. And, for example, one of the things that comes to mind is Andrew Bosworth. He's the head of consumer hardware at Facebook, one of the early employees. He was Mark's TA back at Harvard. And during the election season, he casually and frequently shared articles like there's no such thing as a good Trump supporter. And that's just wild to me. The level of discrimination against conservatives, against anyone slightly to the right of the left, is astonishing. And, when we deal with other groups that are marginalized, we all, at least there's an effort to make things better. There's at least an acknowledgement that maybe there's implicit biases. But when it comes to conservatives, the answer you either get is a wink and a nod, or it's just, well, some views don't deserve to have a platform. And again, I don't agree with many of these views, but they absolutely deserve to have a platform.
Of course. And there should be look, I'm sure you're not going to vote for President Trump's reelection. But you know as well as I, he will not be reelected if his supporters can't speak freely, period. And I don't know if they understand that. I hope they're starting to figure it out. Anyway, thank you for your reporting on this subject.
So I'm really hoping after watching this segment or hearing about this segment that Donald Trump will say to his people, because he's got people, okay, so what can we do about this? And he really hammers them. I don't care what project you're on. I've launched my campaign. This should be your top priority because we are free publicity for Trump's campaign.
Free.
You are free publicity for Trump's campaign. Do you know why Hillary had a massive budget and Trump didn't need one? Us. Mm-hmm. That's how he got elected. Free publicity. And I'm really hoping
imagine,
Trump gets
here's the
this.
thing. Kamala Harris, even Bernie Sanders, even Elizabeth Warren, they are not going to have the this is grassroots people making video after video after video how great they are.
Exactly.
And their policies.
Right.
Okay, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
That's how you know that if Trump doesn't get elected, then something went cray. And so when you hear the prayer from I forget her name, their little spiritual advisor.
I think somebody said her last name was Kane.
No.
No?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it was White or something. I don't know. Anyways, when you hear her prayer, this is a spiritual battle. The devil's like, oh my gosh, what has happened? Well, we had 100 years we had control of these people.
Yeah.
I sucked in kids through the internet. I used the internet. I created the internet so that I could get kids stuck on video games and pornography.
Right.
And lo and behold, those Christians began to use the airwaves and begin to destroy what I have built against me. I mean, they're using the very pornography airwaves to take down pornography. Oh my gosh!
So I used this analogy the other day, and since you did Star Wars earlier, I'm going to go to our faithful standby of The Matrix, because I was talking to Kansas, and I was telling him, as far as you all know that we want to be farmers. I hate electricity. I hate technology. Mm-hmm. I want to unplug. I want to just be out there and pee in the woods, right? Mm-hmm. I don't like cars. Patriot Gallery is always talking about horses and buggies and so on and so forth. But in the movie The Matrix, when Morpheus gives Neo the choice between the red pill and the blue pill, and he takes the red pill, and then all of a sudden he gets sucked out like some sort of slurpy, worm or whatever, and they go and they get the machine and they get him from his little Matrix cove thing, whatever, eggshell. And they take him and he embodies, his brain takes possession of his body for the first time ever. And he realizes what life is like. This is real life. This is reality. That's what the red pill is understanding what reality is. They have to go back into the matrix, into false land, into evil land, into the very tool that was created to enslave their minds. They have to go back into that matrix in order to defeat it and blow it to smithereens. They don't ever want to live in the matrix. That's why they took the red pill. I don't want to live in the matrix. I don't want to live in the internet. Okay, I want to live real life. But I'm coming to you through the matrix right now because I recognize that the only way to take it down is from within. And that's why Leah and I have Resistance Chicks. That's why we have a YouTube channel. That's why we're on Twitter. That's why we're on Facebook. When everyone tells us, well, I would just get off of Facebook. I would just get off of Twitter. I would just get off of YouTube. Well, that's fine. Go live in the woods and you won't change anything, but you'll be safe yourself. But when the Nazis come after you and they will reach you, you will have done nothing to stop it. Mm-hmm. So we are going into the matrix, into the very thing that we despise to make the change. That's why we're still on Facebook. That's why we're still on Twitter. That's why we're everywhere where you guys say, well, I just wouldn't be a part of that. I've left Facebook. I'll never go back there. Okay, that's fine, but you're not making any changes. Mm-hmm. You're not affecting people.
So,
all right. God bless. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday evening. We love you. God loves you. And remember, it's not just a conspiracy theory if it's actually the truth. Good night, guys.
Was cold.